Let's talk about tyrants. When you think of the word, who comes to mind? In the massive story of Chinese history, there's one name that just screams villain: Dong Zhuo. He's the guy who brought an entire empire to its knees. But here's the question: was he just born a monster, or was he a monster created by the chaotic times he lived in?
For most of us, the image we have of Dong Zhuo comes straight from the super famous novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And in that story, man, he is just pure evil. Greedy, cruel, a total creep. I mean, the guy has zero redeeming qualities. But that's the legend. The real history? Well, that's a whole lot more complicated.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The novel gives us this moral monster, right? But if you dig into the actual historical records from his early career, you find a completely different person. They talk about a guy who was strong, a skilled fighter, brave in battle, and so charismatic and generous that his soldiers would follow him anywhere.
So that brings us to the real mystery here. This isn't just a story about a bad guy. It's a story about a transformation. How does a respected, capable general, a hero from the rugged frontier, end up becoming one of the most hated tyrants in the nation's history?
To answer that, we've got to rewind the clock. We need to see who Dong Zhuo was long before he ever marched into the capital and became the stuff of nightmares.
For decades, Dong Zhuo was a product of the Han Dynasty's wild northwest. He wasn't a slick court politician. He was a soldier through and through. He was tough, he was skilled, and he understood the brutal reality of the frontier. He built his army, his power base, not through fancy connections, but by earning the raw loyalty of his troops, even building strong relationships with local non-Han tribes. This was a competent, successful man.
And this moment, right here, tells you everything. Around 188 AD, the imperial court tried to promote him to a new post, away from his army. He just flat out refused. He wrote back saying, "My men refuse to let me go." Think about that. It's a blatant slap in the face to the government, and it showed everyone that the court was weak, and Dong Zhuo's power was his own.
So how did this tough frontier general become a tyrant? It happened fast, like shockingly fast. His entire evil reputation was basically forged in one short, incredibly violent period of time, all within the messed up year of 1890 AD.
Just look at how quickly everything fell apart. The top general in the empire, He Jin, summons Dong Zhuo to the capital to help him get rid of the powerful court eunuchs. But before Dong Zhuo even gets there, He Jin gets himself assassinated by those same eunuchs. In revenge, the general's allies massacre all the eunuchs, and just like that, the entire government decapitates itself. The young emperor is left literally wandering outside the palace, and who marches into this perfect storm of chaos? Dong Zhuo. He then took 3 huge steps that completely shattered all the rules. 1. He didn't have to conquer the capital, he just walked into the leadership vacuum and scared everyone into submission with his army. 2, and this was the big one, he illegally kicked out the 13-year-old emperor and put an 8-year-old kid on the throne who he could control like a puppet. And 3, when a bunch of other warlords ganged up on him, he didn't even try to defend the capital. He just burned the whole thing to the ground.
So, what was his rule actually like? Well, with the capital in ashes and a child on the throne, Dong Zhuo's government wasn't based on law or tradition. It was based on pure, uncut terror. The things he did were just brutal, designed for psychological shock. He'd hold these terror banquets where he would torture his political opponents to death right in front of everyone at dinner. He let his army slaughter entire towns just to steal their stuff. He even looted the sacred tombs of past emperors, which was an absolutely unthinkable crime. Oh, and he crashed the economy by melting down priceless bronze statues to make worthless coins.
And his ego? It was completely out of control. He gave himself the title of Grand Preceptor, making him the most powerful official in the land. He even made the child emperor call him esteemed father and demanded privileges that were supposed to be for the emperor alone. He was making it very clear who was really in charge.
This number tells you everything about his endgame. He used the empire's money to build himself a massive, untouchable fortress called Meiwu. It was basically a monument to his own greed and paranoia, stuffed with treasure, women, and supposedly enough food to last for 30 years. His plan wasn't to rule the empire, it was to bleed it dry and then hide in his fortress, safe from the chaos he'd created.
Naturally, when you're this cruel, you make a lot of enemies. He was so hated that a conspiracy to kill him started brewing, not from some rival warlord, but from right inside his own trusted inner circle.
Now, if you know the story, you're probably thinking of one person right now. The beautiful spy Diaochan, who seduces both Dong Zhuo and his adopted son, the legendary warrior Lu Bu. Well, here's the thing. She never existed. She is a brilliant, amazing, and entirely fictional character made up for the novel.
The real story of Lu Bu's betrayal was, well, a lot less glamorous. The novel gives us this epic love triangle. History gives us a much more human drama. See, Lu Bu is secretly having an affair with one of Dong Zhuo's maids. He was terrified of getting caught by his violent, paranoid foster father, who had, by the way, once thrown a spear at him in a fit of rage. So it wasn't love that pushed him over the edge. It was fear and resentment.
So the real mastermind here wasn't some fictional beauty. It was a court official named Wang Yun. He saw the crack forming between the tyrant and his bodyguard, and he expertly drove a wedge into it, convincing a scared Lu Bu that the only way to save his own skin was to kill his boss.
So, with Dong Zhuo finally assassinated, we're back to our main question. Was this guy the cause of the Han Dynasty's collapse, or was he just a symptom of a disease that was already killing the empire?
You can honestly argue it both ways. I mean, on one hand, his specific actions, getting rid of the emperor, burning the capital, those were the final fatal blows to the dynasty's authority. But on the other hand, the court was already a corrupt, chaotic mess. The power vacuum was there before he even showed up. So the best verdict is probably this. He was a man of the frontier, totally unprepared for court politics. His only tool for every problem was force. He didn't start the fire, but he absolutely poured gasoline all over it.
And the proof is in what happened next. His death didn't bring peace. The guys who killed him couldn't hold on to power, and Dong Zhuo's old generals swept back into the capital, unleashing an even worse wave of chaos. The problem was now officially bigger than any one person. The Han Dynasty was, for all intents and purposes, over.
Which leaves us with one last thought to chew on. In the case of Dong Zhuo, was he a monster who single-handedly broke an empire, or was he simply the kind of monster a broken empire creates? It really shows you how blurry the line between a cause and a symptom can be.